Chapter 4. I become a commuter at age 14. My grandfather worked 4 jobs. He was a fireman, a handyman, a substitute teacher, and a house painter. With those jobs, he was able to put 4 children through college. That's where he spent all his money, because he knew that education was the best way to get ahead in life. This is before Instagram and sex tapes. Protect your brain, he always told me, because it's all you got. Your brain is your ticket to wherever you want to go. His other lesson was, people are crazy, which is so simple, yet shockingly helpful. I've often wanted to verbally or physically fight someone before remembering that people are crazy and anyone can have a gun. This was proven last year when I honked at a swerving car and the driver got out and yelled, "You want to fight?" and then showed me a gun. My brain was definitely my ticket out of Staten Island because it got me into a Catholic high school called Regis. Regis Philbin was named after my high school, but then didn't get in. So he went to Xavier High School, which was full of kids who beat the shit out of kids who went to Regis. Regis would change the course of the rest of my life. I was extremely lucky to get accepted to Regis because A, it's one of the best high schools in the country, and B, it's free. For Catholics in New York, Regis is almost like the watchtower for Jehovah's Witnesses. Tens of thousands of kids apply for 120 spots in each class. To this day, if a Catholic mother hears I went to Regis, she will grab my face and say, "God bless, what a wonderful place." The only catch, Regis is in Manhattan. So on a good day, it took me an hour and a half each way to get there. And mine wasn't even the longest commute. Some of my friends traveled almost 2.5 hours from upstate New York and rural Pennsylvania. I took a bus, then a ferry, then a subway, which when you type it into Google Maps, looks like you're emigrating from China to San Francisco in the 1840s. But no one complained about commute because, again, it was a free high school, and we all felt insanely grateful to be there. As my grandfather reminded me, if you don't want to make the trip, there are plenty of kids who would take your place. Then he'd say, "By the way, did you hear about the boy who stuck his head out the bus window and hit a telephone pole and his head ripped clean off his body? People are crazy." Initially, my parents were very worried about their 14-year-old boy commuting alone into the city and taking the subway home late at night, especially when their 14-year-old boy looked like this. Unfortunately, I can't show you a picture. If that doesn't say, "Come and get it" to a subway pedophile, I don't know what does. And like many of the kids at Regis, I was book smart and street illiterate. But I would learn and experience so much over the next 4 years that by the time I graduated, I looked like this. And the picture is of somebody who looks like, well, an old Jewish guy, actually. It might be a rabbi. There was a nickname for New York in the 1930s that I always loved, the Wonder City. And for most of us, coming from the suburbs and suddenly being in the middle of Manhattan with no adult supervision after school ended, New York was a wonder city on every level. Some of my friends used this freedom to do actual fun things, like taking ecstasy and sneaking into clubs like Limelight, which is an abandoned church where you could dance on the altar, or Tunnel, which got shut down once a month because someone OD'd or got stabbed in the bathroom. Police referred to Tunnel as an open-air drug supermarket, which today is just a Walmart. I was way too afraid to try drugs because, again, my brain was all I had. So I enjoyed the nerdier perks of Manhattan, like seeing a David Lynch movie that never would have played on Staten Island, or sneaking in to watch the funeral of Robert Guiraud, one of the partners of the publishing house Farrar, Straus & Giroux. You know, crazy teenage hijinks. I wasn't always so squeaky clean, though. Occasionally, I signed out from school under the guise of visiting a nearby museum but instead snuck off to play billiards at a local pool hall, like one of the troubled teens in The Music Man. Or my friend Milosh and I would go to the Knitting Factory or performance art space called ABC No Rio. We'd share a 40 of malt liquor and watch a 12-person band called the World Inferno Friendship Society perform punk klezmer songs about Weimar Germany, Paul Robeson, and Austro-Hungarian actor Peter Lorre. The closest thing we had to that on Staten Island was a waiter who sang, "That's amore." And sometimes my friend Pete and I would go to an Italian restaurant downtown and order 1 glass of red wine, please. And they would serve us. 1 glass of red wine for 2 out-of-control teens? Then we stumbled home, flying from the wine, but also terrified because we thought the Blair Witch Project was real and the witch was coming for us next. Did I mention we were book smart? I also got to meet the most intimidating and sophisticated girls in the world. Girls who attended fancy neighboring schools with names like Marymount, Chapin, Spence, and Nightingale. Names that just sounded rich. We somehow convinced them to attend our high school dances, and I felt like a way chubbier Jay Gatsby, faking a culture air to mask my Staten Island bootlegger upbringing. To this day, that's how I feel 90% of the time. All my friends and I would hang out after school for hours because no one wanted to go home. The adventure of the city was so much more exciting than anything waiting for us in the outer boroughs. It was like a slightly more grown-up version of the Goonies, only our treasure was knowledge, and our sloth was a guy on the subway who looked like Sloth. And look at that, he's masturbating. Hey, you guys! The upside of having an hour-and-a-half commute is that you can get a lot of homework done on the way home. And on the way to school in the morning, you can cram for all the tests you didn't study for the night before. There were also many days where homework and studying were disregarded in favor of extremely juvenile and dangerous behavior, like doing dips on the chain-link ropes between 2 moving subway cars, or seeing who could run across all 4 subway tracks to the other side of the platform without touching the 3rd rail and dying. Or, tying your friend's hands to the subway pole and then pantsing him so he was naked in the middle of the train and couldn't pull up his pants. And then if the stranger on the train tried to help him, you'd yell, "He's touching that kid!" Really smart, cool stuff like that. One of my most vivid memories in high school was when our cartoonishly uptight dean of discipline sat down next to my friends at me at lunch and said, "Is there something you fellows would like to tell me about what happened on the subway today?" So many terrible things happen on the subway all the time that we truly had no idea what he was referring to. So we just stayed quiet. He said, "Really? Nothing happened? You boys weren't overheard saying something like, 'Suck my cock'?" And he said it with such an aha gotcha tone that we all immediately burst out laughing. We still had no idea what he was talking about, but we were so excited that a random stranger on the New York City subway had called our high school to complain about a group of teenagers using the phrase "suck my cock." I can only imagine the complaints they receive at 311. This morning, a teenager told me to eat his butthole, and I refused." There were also scarier moments, like when a group of older, much stronger teenagers followed us off the train late at night, jumped us, and broke my friend Pete's nose. Or the time when I was standing on the corner of Houston and Bowery, and I watched a man step into the street and get hit at full speed by a city bus, and his body basically exploded in front of me. That was very, very disturbing, and I can still close my eyes and picture pieces of him lying on Houston Street. But it's also New York, so 15 minutes later, you just move on with your life. Like you didn't just see a human being turned into meatloaf. That's the verse they cut out of New York, New York. I take it for granted now, but New York is intense and overwhelming, especially when your brain is still developing. The shit you see, including many piles of actual human shit, definitely affects you and hardens you. I know, when you see me, you think, how'd he get so hard? When you walk into a subway station at 9 a.m. and there's a man standing halfway through the turnstile with his pants down as his tired fist inside his butt, that definitely alters your sense of what's quote-unquote normal. I was always on edge when I traveled home alone late at night. Except I was very conscious of never smiling because I was afraid that if I smiled, someone would punch me. I actively tried to look sad, and in keeping with my slow-to-talk, living-in-my-head approach to life, I would invent awful things that had happened to me to tell a robber so he would just feel guilty and then not rob me. Like I expected a robber to say, "Wow, I'm so sorry, Colin. I was going to steal your $10, but after hearing that your cat killed your sister, I simply cannot in good conscience take your money. In fact, here's $5 from me in memory of your sister, Noxima." When the subways weren't always empty and scary, they were loud and crowded. So I got used to reading and focusing while standing in the hottest, sweatiest corner of the train as a panhandler screamed about Jesus coming back to earth to send us all to hell, and would we like to hear a song about that? It was actually great preparation for SNL, where on any given Saturday someone in the crew was yelling about a technical problem. The musical guest 40 backup dancers are arguing with an actual llama that just took a dump on their craft service table, while a cast member is crying and throwing glass bottles in their dressing room because their sketch got cut after dress rehearsal. And I'm standing in the middle of all this with a script for a sketch that airs in 15 minutes thinking, what's a funnier way to say front butt? And then there was the boat portion of my trip, which is always a funny element to sprinkle into a morning commute. No one has ever transferred from a city bus to a subway and thought, there should be a boat ride in between. If it sounds glamorous to arrive in Manhattan every morning via ship, let me assure you, it was not. Even my immigrant ancestors arriving at Ellis Island would have seen me on the ferry and thought, there has to be a better way. The Staten Island Ferry is the busiest passenger ferry in the world, with almost 25 million riders a year. By my own unofficial calculation, it also holds the record for most exposed public restrooms, somehow designed so that any casual passerby can see the entire bathroom, all of the stalls, and every single drag queen fixing her makeup in the mirror, as well as a record for most dead-eyed businessmen staring at the sea contemplating whether to end it. Riding the ferry was not a yacht lifestyle. The bins under the seats were marked life jackets, but should have been marked 100 rats live here. The ferry is known for its amazing views of the Statue of Liberty, but it's also a great place to watch a raccoon eat a passenger's leftover meth. And look, the raccoon is reading the New York Post. Cute! There are many questions that come to mind while riding the Staten Island ferry. Questions like, why does the donut store on the ferry sell a 25-ounce can of Foster's Australian beer? Or why is a janitor telling me, let's go, get out the boat, when the boat is still moving at full speed somewhere near the dock? Or, that Russian woman just threw a stroller out the back of the ferry. Is that something I should report? All I'm saying is, you've never experienced a New York sunset until you've seen it from the deck of the Staten Island ferry. As a seagull pukes up mouse bones onto your geometry textbook, you'll think, are we in the Mediterranean? And a drunk ferry hand will burp, nah, sweetie, that's the Hudson Bay, where all the New York sewers meet for breakfast. You can almost hear Come Sail Away playing in the background as you pass an open trash can full of Bud Light lime cans and actual printed pornography. Hey, something's got to pass the time. And time flies when you're having this much fun / tetanus. After the subway and the ferry, getting on the bus on Staten Island to finish off my evening commute actually felt like a relief. I knew I was almost home. Plus, everyone on the bus was resigned to a defeated silence. It's like we all thought, we live in a place full of cars, yet we're riding a bus. Let us never speak of this to anyone. The bus snaked its way up to Victory Boulevard, which was dedicated to the American victory in World War I, but also showcased the modern victory of having a Golden Crust Jamaican beef patty restaurant share an office space with H&R Block. It was the heyday of the Wu-Tang Clan, and every day my bus passed an official Wu-wear clothing store. One of my great joys in life was making a movie with Method Man, who told me he would never leave Staten Island because it was the only place in America where he could get pulled over and the cops were actually excited to see him. Then one day the store closed and someone replaced it with a pet store. But the new owner was either too cheap or too big a fan to take down the giant W from the Wu wear sign, so they kept it and named the store Walking Dogs with the big Wu W. Then we passed my Catholic church with its enormous banner reading, "Abortion is murder. Also, we've added a Spanish Mass at 1 p.m. And as the bus crested the hill by Clove Lakes Park, I could look back and see all of Manhattan in the distance. I felt the sense of accomplishment that comes with completing any journey, even a daily commute by land, by sea, and by underground rocket toilet. To this day, I'm always more productive while traveling because I know the journey itself is getting me somewhere, and that frees my mind to be more creative. There's a reason it took an American to invent the rocking chair, because even when we're sitting still, we like to feel like we're in motion. I exited the bus every night at the base of a cemetery run by stray dogs, which then chased me up the street to my house. 8 hours later, I woke up and did it all over again.